Ah, the Camino de Santiago, the legendary Camino de Santiago. Well, when I started this journey, I certainly was nothing of a Christian. In fact, as I read some of those books that were out there in the New Age market, including Shirley MacLaine, where she talked about the ley lines, the special energy that was along the Camino de Santiago, it was these kinds of things I imagined might happen. As a pilgrim, when I wrote about this coming home, I think the thing that really came to light within the very first day was the fact that this is a time of humility. Being on your feet, as we were for the kilometers, which was 800 traditional kilometers plus an additional 100 kilometers, 500 miles plus an additional 50 miles that took us all the way from the border of France to the end of the world, as it was literally called, Finisterre, or the end of the world. This particular walk, or this journey, the Camino Francais, is definitely the most popular of the variety of caminos that are available out there. My girlfriend was Catholic, and for her, it had a spiritual Catholic aura to it, a certain meaning for her, at least as a Catholic. But as for me, as a not both non-Catholic and non-Christian, I really took it as a place where I would walk and trust and be present, be in the elements, being someone who was much more of a Zen student, who enjoyed mindfulness and enjoyed meditation. I imagined that the walk would be a time for me for reflection, for contemplation, for the surprise of travel, the magic of travel. And all of these things, of course, takes place on the Camino. There's no way to summarize the Camino, and that's why oftentimes I just put the stats. I let people know, yeah, we walked for 44 days. That included 4 rest days. It included the terrible times where we had massive blisters. We also share the story of the very first day of the Camino. The very first day when we got lost going over the mountain pass, where the sign had read, if there's inclement weather, whatever you do, do not pass through the Pyrenees Pass. We looked, and for all accounts, it was a perfect day. The storm descended on us quite suddenly. It started with the gusts, which, with our $1 REI ponchos, they were ripped into pieces, flying away in the distance. And then the rain started. That we said no electronics, and we had barely got the experience of following the markers. At the very turn at the top of the summit, where we had found a wonderful little shelter, we turned the wrong way, and we ended up going the opposite direction. We went so far the opposite direction that it was only a true luck that we landed at a town just before sunset. A town that we found out later had only 4 residents. We knocked on the door from the nice man that had been standing outside and asked him where the romanticized is and how do we get there. And with my rusty Spanish, he explained to me that Roncesvalles was about 10 or 15 kilometers down that trail. We are now completely drenched, having had it rain all day with inadequate equipment. And we sat there and we took the moment on the Camino to pray and to decide, can we ask for help? And I would say, if I look back, the humility of asking for help was truly the most vulnerable experience for an American who is used to being able to pay for and buy whatever they want. As we stood there in the shelter of a stable that had once been a church, we decided we must ask for help. And we said we would offer even a bribe in the form of money. So I knocked on his door, he opened the door, and he agreed he would give us a ride. but not without us waiting still for 20 or 30 minutes outside in the cold as we completely were shivering. Finally, he just changed his mind, brought us in where he had a wonderful abode with a fire running, candles going, cheese and olives and wine on the table, and we learned it was his birthday. It all ended well as we got to the hotel, rushed upstairs, immersed ourselves in the hot shower, collapsed on the bed without even getting into the covers. And that, my friends, was the very first day of the Camino. This became a legendary story as we developed the friends and network as we walked across Spain. This story was legendary, and soon we were known as the ones who almost died on the Camino. I say that with something of some laughter, but of course it is dead serious, and the fact that we did finally ask for help was profound. So what I wanted to say on this memorial for the Camino is I was not Christian by any means on this walk. And at the same time, it was truly the opening for me in so many ways to appreciate Christianity. Obviously, the cities and the cathedrals were of great comfort, and we looked for them and we walked into them and we enjoyed them every single week. But when I bought the prayer beads, which were Catholic beads used for the rosary, I transformed those into the only form that I would know of prayer, which would be a mindfulness prayer of basically counting my breath or being attuned to my breath. And oftentimes I would walk the day with those beads, which I still have and use every single day. But now I've transformed them into the beads for the Jesus prayer. Lord Jesus Christ, Son of God, have mercy on me. At that time, who would have imagined that in this spiritual vacation, this walking vacation, as it oftentimes is, this incredibly secular experience overall, where were the serious religious people? They definitely were there, but it was few and far between. Much more the vibe was the sense of a walking vacation. But what we learned as we walked throughout this Camino were so many things, from the humility to just the very fact of denying the technology that was available to us that would have speedily got us along the way, and truly being on the ground, moment by moment, in the weather, from the ups and downs of the weather, and the wonderful friends we got to see and lose and then come back again was absolutely incredible. So 15 years later, it's truly something to remember this spectacular experience of the Camino de Santiago. I wanted to provide this to show the seed that was planted in me 15 years ago that would bear fruit 8 years after this walk, when I myself finally, out of my own will, decided to become Christian. We arrived in Santiago on December 1st, 2010. 6 days later, we arrived at Finisterre, the end of the world, on December 6th, 2010. Little did I know that December 6th is one of the great feast days, that of the great St. Nicholas. And St. Nicholas is certainly a very close saint for me now, and the memory of him and the completion of the Camino go hand in hand. Ironically, I promised myself that if we made it to Finisterre, the next day I would take off everything and rush into the cold sea as a baptism, which I considered to be a symbolic baptism. Little did I realize that my baptism would come 12 years later.